All right, just because it's the first of the year don't mean that the enemy's not going to stop his attacks. He just tries to increase his as everything else increases. And you got a fresh start every first of every year, but he takes a fresh start too. He vows to take you out any way he can at the first of the year. He thought, well, they're making New Year's resolutions to do better, then I'm going to make one to try to make it worse for them. So expect that. It's part of it. You know, God's always about renewing his blessings daily, but you got to remember the enemy renews his attacks daily. So that's why you have to have more strength than he has, and only in the Lord will you find that. So I got a lot to cover today, or I would try to talk a little more about that. We talked last week about the end of the year, and I went back and showed you how it was prophetically said what God was going to do in the earth in 2017, and how I watched it unfold. And sadly, so many people missed it, but he's still offering it. I sense in my spirit. We'll talk some about what I see for this year, but of what kind of year it's going to be spiritually. As we begin our third year here at the building, I've got many deep emotions about what I've learned so far, and hopefully you have too, if you've been coming here or watched on YouTube or whatever. And I've got some deep sense of sadness also of what and where we could have been by now. And yet, I've got that ray of light of hope, I guess you'd say, that this may be the year for some divine interventions to take place into our next move forward. Always moving forward. Never stay where you're at and never go backwards. Moving forward. So as I told you last week, there were, this past year, so many spiritual opportunities were missed. And not just locally, nationwide. I saw it nationwide, especially within our churches. I've never seen a time where our churches are so satisfied with just setting up camp and doing nothing. And this is a time for movement. Movement creates power, as I told you in one of the messages I'm going to have to reteach here soon. But it is, and we're failing. So as I do my first message of 2018, I want to press this issue a bit harder with this one, which I call today, Don't Miss the Boat. We heard the anchor holds before service, and sometimes your ship, your vessel, is compared to a ship that's going to go through some storms. It is. You're no way around it. That's why you have to make sure your ship is ready prepare for it. Also, don't miss the boat means spiritually. God's offering something. It's like the ark. He said, here's your place of refuge and safety. Don't miss the boat. So that's what we're going to address today, plus talk about the upcoming year. Hopefully, if I have time. Here we go. Since this is the beginning of a new year, let's look at the beginning in Genesis, about chapter 6. And we'll just have to jump through some of these. I've never seen so many sirens come through this town at this time of the morning in my life. There goes another one. Just shows you everything's increasing. So let's look at that right quick. Genesis 6. I didn't mark this one because I've got so many to cover, and I printed out some that was for the sake of time. That would save us time. All right, 6. This is when men began to multiply on the earth more and more, and things were starting to happen, and the more people got multiplied, the more evil increased, and God's starting to get a little weary with people, and he's saying, my spirit's not always going to strive with man, because his flesh just kept controlling him. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and everything they did, all their thoughts were on evil continually, he said. So in verse 6, it says, God then repented. You didn't know God could repent too, did you? Well, there it is. He can. It repented the Lord that he even made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And I'm going to make sure I go along to verse 13. Okay. And he said, I will destroy man, who I created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and every creeping thing and fowls of the earth, for it repents me. There he goes again. For I've even made them. Now, that's pretty disgusting. We've let the Lord have to go there. But Noah is one of the biggest words in the Bible you ever see, because it had not been for Noah at this time, we wouldn't be here. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And these are the generations of Noah. He was a just man and perfect in his generations as he could be. And Noah walked with God. He never made a move that he didn't seek God's counsel about. And Noah begat 3 sons, and it goes on to say that who they were, and that the earth was corrupt, and before God, and the earth was filled with violence. That's important to note for what I'm about to say. And God looked upon the earth, and it was corrupt, and all flesh corrupted his way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence, and through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So that's key. He's just going to destroy them with the earth. Well, it's still here if you haven't noticed. So God's intentions were spiritual, and we'll talk about that. So he basically told him, at that point, he told Noah to build an ark. He gave him instructions, all right? We'll break it down a little bit. If you notice in verse 6, God even repented because he made man, because his mind was continually on evil. That's all he thought about. And then about 8, it says Noah found favor and grace with the Lord. Thank goodness for it. The earth was corrupt and full of violence. Does that sound familiar to you today? Is it corrupt now? Oh, like never before. Everywhere you turn, every day on the news, somebody's corrupted. They're being exposed for corruption. It's gotten so blatantly increased that it doesn't matter anymore. You can't keep up with the corruption or follow it through to make sure they even get prosecuted for their corruption, because here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. You done forgot about them. And they can't even prosecute some people because they're so busy with the latest corruption scandal coming out. It's that way right now. And the world's full of violence every day, increasing. So in verse 13, God said to Noah, after he told him, he said, the end of all flesh is come. Now I want you to remember this key. He didn't say the end of the world has come. He didn't say the end of time has come. He said the end of all flesh. And that's key. God saw that man was incapable of living a good life if he's led by his flesh. Can't do it. I ain't doing it. Well, man can't do it. He cannot live by the flesh and lead a good life. He can do good things and look like he's a good man to a point, but his flesh is ruling him, and it will get him in some mess sooner or later. So he had to redirect his original plan, and he had to make it so that man has to be led by the Spirit. That's the only way, and there is now no other way to do that. Nothing's changed with God in that area. He redirected his original plan right here when it repented. That's the only time you'll see where God said it repented. He repented of it. So God instructed in verse 14 that Noah to build a boat. As we talked about, a boat represents your vessel. A boat is so throughout the Bible is so used of God to show you about a refuge or a safe place to come into. In this case, it's called the ark. Now notice, he did not give Noah a deadline. So the flood would not have came until Noah finished the ark. So everybody wants to get all squirrely in their brains talking about the end of time. They ain't going to be the end of time until we finish what we're here to do. We have a hand in when the end of time comes. This is the same pattern he did when he destroyed the earth the first time. Well, like I told you, it's still here. The word destroy is used in a very liberal way where they can say, okay, it means this and this and this, but you'll notice how God does things. So if Noah had took him a month to build the ark, the floods would not have come till a month. If it took him a year, the floods would not have come till the year was up, because God made a covenant with Noah on this, a deal. So we have a hand in how the plans of God unfold. Now, perhaps Noah found God's grace and his favor because the Lord looks upon the heart. And he knew that Noah would not procrastinate or be lazy. When he looked upon his heart, he said, that guy right there won't put it off. If I told him to build an ark, he'll get too busy building an ark. Everybody else will say, let's do it another day. It's too cold outside. It's too hot outside. They'd made excuses, not Noah. And he knew that he would not be lazy. He's not going to lay around and expect somebody to bring him the wood and look into how to build it and go get the book on how to, and he's not going to Google nothing. He's just going to get out there and do it. So he knew that he would prepare and go right to work. That's what's wrong right now. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work. God looked down and said, I'm looking for somebody's heart who's willing to work. He found Noah. And you and me wouldn't be here today if he didn't. Noah wasn't that kind of man, basically. Remember last year that I told you that so many people did not prepare for or work at their spiritual life, and I watched them stay the same? They didn't try to build their spiritual life up and get any better or know God any closer or move on in the things of God. They just stayed where they're at. I'm comfortable right here. Just let me just ride it on out right here. Thank God Noah was not like that, or mankind would have ended right then. You think about that for a second. If that one man had thought like we think, let's just hang out here. Let's just, everything's okay right here. I'll do everything else, but I don't want to work on my spiritual life. Thank God Noah was not like us in that matter. And look at chapter 7 also, and when it says God did as Noah instructed him, and this massive boat got completed. So as you noticed, once he finished it. Now I told you he had a hand in how it played out. So verse 17 will tell you this in chapter 7 of that, when Noah said, and the Bible says, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased. Now what I tell you the enemy's going to do at the first of the year, he's going to increase his attacks too. You've made a vow to do something better, he's going to make a vow to stop it. So this thing that God told Noah to prepare for was now increasing. It was now getting to that point where a pressure was put on it. And it bear up. Now, that's key, up. Don't go down, stay up. Stay up. No matter what the devil's trying to tell you, stay up. Don't get down in the depression with him. It lifted up the ark, and it was lifted up above the earth. Up above, lifted up. And I did a sermon called Lifted Up, and it's basically on those same principles right there. God's the one that lifts you up above all the bad stuff that's happening in your life. But you got to do it spiritually. Don't expect him to come down and do some magic, pixie dust on you and everything's going to be beautiful. No, that's Disneyland. We're talking about real life. So what seemed to be, this is key, what seemed to be the opposition drove the boat higher. Now what comes against you looks like it's there to take you out. That flood looked like it was there to destroy them off the face of the earth. But it also is there what drove them up higher. It drove them to their destinies. Same thing's going to happen in your life. And there comes a time when God's his prophetic pressure, and this is the year for that, God's prophetic pressure has to be placed upon us who believe. Here's why. So that we will bring forth what God has placed within us so we can accomplish the impossible. We won't do it without it. I'm going to promise you that. There ain't nobody hardly on the earth left anymore who will hear God and do what he wants done in their life unless he puts prophetic pressure upon them somehow, some way. We've done got the armchair, lazy boy Christian mentality going in and seep through our churches, and it's all just, we're complacent. We've gotten spiritually, dormant and lazy. Unless that prophetic pressure is put upon us, we won't move. We'll stay right where we're at. Why would we move a good thing? We got a good thing going on, We'll just stay right here. Stay right here. It's so comfortable, He's going to make the comfortable uncomfortable in the coming year. Count on it. The Noah's Ark story is probably the best example that we have as to who will listen to God's still small voice, no matter what it looks like is going on around them, and what seems to be impossible to accomplish, it seems crazy to everybody around you. You imagine what Noah went through as he was building the boat? Now, you may not know this, a lot of people don't. It had never rained on the earth at that time. It just came up from the ground like a dew. At that point in time, there was no rain. He just watered the plants, the fields, and everything through dew, seeping up through the earth. So if he's building a boat and everybody's walking by mocking him and making fun of him, he looked like a dummy. He looked like an idiot. He looked like he's out of his mind. Noah listened to God, and no matter what everybody else said, he kept true to what he saw in his spirit, led by the Spirit. And so it's crazy to everybody else. Even his own family thought, what are you doing? What are you doing, Noah? You gone crazy? They was concerned about the boy. Well, who's going to ignore the mocking and the ridicule that comes from all the laughing and the negative people as you build something for God. Who's going to do that now? That's a cry from God's heart right to you this year. Who will endure the ridicule and the mocking and the laughing at you from your family and your friends while you're doing something for God? I don't know. That's why I wanted to ask you, I guess. It seems like everybody's against you. Who's going to work at God's plan to save their world, their community, or their family while everyone that you're trying to help seems to be turned against you? I mean, the people you're trying to help is going to be against you, and you're going to keep building. You're going to keep building. That's why I call this place The Building. Build up your faith. Keep building toward what God wants done in your life. Build your spiritual life up. That's the whole goal. In chapter 8, about verse 4, you'll notice that the ark rested on a mountaintop. Now this is key. There's a lot of connections made here. When that ark rested up on the mountaintop, you remember Jesus went up into a mountain to pray. That's where he found his rest and restoration through God. Get away from the crowd. Get away from the yip yap and all the people talking. Put down all your gadgets. Get away from everything and listen to God. And that's what he says. Go up into a mountain to pray. The ark rested upon a mountain. Okay? And in verse 10, we're told that Noah stayed there 7 days once it did rest on the mountain. Now, 7 days is a sign in the Bible of completion. When a mission has been completed, it's usually in 7 days in a week. So anyway, we'll get on to that some other time. And in verse 12, Noah waited another 7 days and stayed there. Now, this is another question for you this year. Who will have the patience to wait on God's divine timing? You know, I mean, think about it. After being rock and rolled around in those stormy waters with a boat full of stinking, just have to picture in your brain for just a second. You're inside this big boat with a bunch of stinking and panicky animals, and you got complaining family members everywhere. And just as soon as that boat rested up on top of that mountain, what would you have done? I know what I'd done. As soon as I could, I'd have jumped out of that boat, and I'd say, I need some relief from this, and I got as far away from that crowd as I could get. You know, even though the waters were still there, I'd have jumped off from the land and I'd have walked as far as I could get to get away from that crowd. So, but what did Noah do? He stayed put. Who will stay put until God lets him know when it's time to move? It's another question for this year. Do you now see why God chose Noah and not one of us? That is why. He knew Noah would stay put and follow the plan all the way through. Some people start out and going to do a good thing for God. They don't follow it all the way through. You know, whatever reasons, obstacles they hit or whatever, they stop short. Yet, that same plan from God is upon all of us, you and me. It's on us. It's called prophetic pressure. And it's going to come to us all. And it's only going to increase just like the waters did at the flood. Those prophetic waters that are coming to flood you, to move you out of your place of complacency, is going to come. It's going to happen. And trust me, when the pressure gets heavy enough upon you, you will go to God. You will. You'll want to know what his instructions are on how to build your faith up, how to build a boat that will float above all the storms and all the chaos. Because when chaos breaks loose in your life, you need to get above it all. You're going to go to God. You're going to say, I need to be taken higher. Take me higher so I can see a better view of this. You know, my spirit has to have something, God. And you believe me, when the pressure is put on you, you will snap in your physical man. You're mentally not capable of handling such pressure. So you got to go to your spirit. This will be the year for these things. It will be divine interruptions, and it will be a year of prophetic pressure. That's going to happen. Now that's going to happen in the spirit. And if you're not in tune with the spirit, you may miss it again this year. How many years are we going to keep saying this? We missed it. We missed it. And then you die. And you look back on your life and you say, God, I missed it every year. Divine interruptions are going to come, you know, getting our attention and driving us to our purpose, even when it looks hopeless, even when it seems crazy to everybody around you, and even when it's never been done before. You know, that's a key one right there. Well, it's never been done before. Well, great. That's why God chose you. You know, maybe you're crazy enough to do it. You know, because if the church ain't going to do it, and they done got their little butt prints in their pew seats, you know, there permanently, so it's like a walk of fame or something. When they die, they can go look at their butt cheeks in the pew and say, that's where old Margaret said. Good God. You know, there you go. So even when it's never been done before, and even when it seems that the end of all things is near, and we start gripping hold tight and just say, latching on to what we have left, to give us our little morsels, and the whole world's going crazy, and let's get in our little cocoons and hide. No, you can't. That's not a time for fear or panic. It's time to move forward. Troops, God's calling for his troops to move forward because we had a new direction in 2017. Now it's time to move forward. We made big progress in Christianity. Open doors were there. And the church just sat back. The troops didn't move with the leadership. They're still not. You know, it's sad. You've been given an opportunity. You've been given an open door to say, all right, we can stand up for our beliefs like never before. We've got some backing now, nationwide. Let's do this. I know all of my dreams and my visions, if they're going to come to pass, it will be in a way that's never been done before. See, that's why I've had to take the road I've taken, because it's never been done before, the path that God's laid before me. It's never been done this way. I can't go to anybody, no preacher, no pastor, no anybody with any titles. I can't go to them and say, how's this done? Because that's their way. I can't do it the way they're doing it. I can't. God won't allow me. He said, no, I didn't create you, design you, and equip you in that way. That's for them. That's all fine and good for them, and I applaud them and honor them. But my path has to be done in a way that's never been done before. And yeah, it costs me a lot, sure does. I get a lot of ridicule. I get a lot of, it's lonely, to be honest with you. It's lonely to walk this out. But I'm never alone with God. So I know that. And it's hard because, everybody's asking the question, how many members you got over there now? Or how's it growing? Is your church growing? It's constant. Well, I just do what God's called me to do. God's the one who gives the increase. I just keep sowing the seed and move forward. Now, I got to fast forward into the New Testament. And we've got to read John about, I think it's verse 6. Yeah. John 6, as we get there, it's going to tell us about, I guess you get more into the Jesus versions of similar things when we talk about a boat. The boat. I'll never stop thinking about this being spiritually instead of just a physical boat. All right, it says 16 through 27, a lot of fast reading. Here we go. And when it was evening, it is come, and right after Jesus went into this mountain by himself now. He just went by himself up into this mountain that we talked about. Here comes his disciples, and they went down into the sea, and he entered into a ship, and he went over to the Sea of Capernaum, and it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew, and when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. But then he saw them, it is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. The day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none on the boat there, save the one that was there, and his disciples were entered, and Jesus went not with the disciples into the boat, but his disciples were gone away alone. Now, howbeit there came other boats to Tiberias in that place where they eat bread, and they had the Lord give thanks. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, neither his disciples, they took to shipping and came to Capernaum seeking for Jesus. And when they had found him on the other side of the sea, they said unto him, Rabbi, when comest thou hither? And Jesus said to them, Verily I say unto you, you seek me not because you saw the miracles, but because you eat of the loaves and were filled. And here it is, labor not for the meat which perishes, but for the meat which endures for everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give you, for he hath God the Father sealed. Now here's what I'm breaking down for you. Verse 16 will show you that the disciples had to be willing to follow. They had to be willing to move when Jesus did. They had to be willing to move. And right now it seems like we're frozen. Verse 17, you notice that they must enter in even when things look dark, because he said it was dark then. You know, I'm talking about a boat here, but it's also spiritually. The message is spiritual. You got to enter in when things are dark, and Jesus sometimes cannot be found. That don't stop you from entering in just because you don't see Jesus in it. You know, he's trying to teach you a lesson here that I'm going with the Father. I'm going to teach you about where my presence goes. I am there also. So just because you don't see Jesus don't mean you don't enter in. Verse 18, because sometimes he shows up later, and sometimes he's there all along, and sometimes he's testing your faith. So just be, willing to move. And verse 18, when you enter in, the wind of change will blow upon your vessel. Count on it. It's going to happen. When you enter into a boat, there will be a storm. That's what boats are built so strong for. Count on it. Verse 19, the boat had to be rowed. Now we go back to working. They had to work at it. People these days in Christianity don't want to work at it at all. And that's sad to watch. And when they did work at it, and when they did see Jesus, they were afraid. What did I tell you here a while back? People are afraid of the Spirit. The Holy Ghost is scary to them. Same thing works right here, what I'm telling you right here. They were afraid when they did see Jesus. I mean, if he were to appear in church now, half of them run out screaming like a horror movie. If Jesus were to come into the church and descend in front of them one day, 95% of them would run out the door. That's how scary it's getting. So, in verse 21, they willingly received him. What did I tell you last year? So many people didn't receive what he offered. Well, here's another case of it. They finally willingly received him. Finally. And in verse 22, the people on the other side, the watchers and the spectators, the people you're supposed to be making a difference in their life, the witnessing people that you're supposed to be going to, those people were watching them to see what kind of lives they led. And so the spectators and the watchers, they didn't see no other boat except the one that the disciples entered into. Wow. Their eyes was watching what was going on. People are drawn to when something's happening. They don't want to go where something died and dried up. They're drawn to something happening. They feel that fresh word of God, that spirit going forth from that person or that ship, and it's like, what's that ship? Something's happening there. And they watched it. And Jesus was not seen by them. They didn't see Jesus. They just saw the effects of what Jesus was doing for those people. So they began to watch closer. And Jesus expects us to enter into the boat, spiritually we're talking, and he will be present even when he cannot be seen, or sometimes we seem to just be going it alone. That's what I told you. This is a lonely walk sometimes when you're called of God. Sometimes you feel like you're going at it all by yourself and the whole world's against you. But you got to go. You got to keep going, keep moving forward. If we enter in, others are going to see our boat, a boat that floats. A lot of them sunk. A lot of these ships that started off with strong headwinds have now flipped over and they're lost at sea. A lot of these boats that you watch take off and like beautiful, the Titanic cannot be sank. Here she is, the most greatest creation man has at that point of invention. Cannot be sunk. Well, a little iceberg. Just had a little something to say about that. So, that's the way it is spiritually. A boat that floats when others can't. They'll be watching to see if the boat will make it to its destination, despite all the storms that boat has to go through. The anchor holds. And a boat that will cause others to watch it and know that even when, and even though Jesus is not visibly with them, he must be the one that's kept that boat sailing. Something's got that boat still trucking along because it's still there. And those others were moved to get into a boat and go seeking Jesus. See, they saw something happening in that boat, and they said, I want to be part of that. So they started seeking Jesus. Now, verse 23 says they found him. And when they found him, the reason they did is because they did something they probably have never done before. They stepped out in faith and went and found a boat and said, let's go find this man. Let's go find Jesus. You know, that's what they should see when they see a group of church being as a boat, as an ark, vessels, and everybody else is in the flood reaching for the side of the thing and can't get it. You know, at that point it was too late in history, but now it's not too late. You can still say that boat is floating. That boat's been through some storms. It's weathered the storms. It's got something going on inside of it. I want in that boat. See, that's what you should be saying and doing, or those others or watchers should be doing. If you're a church, then you should be wanting them to get into your boat. And they did something they'd never done before, and they seek him. They sought him. You know, wise men still seek him, but wise men also still bring him gifts. We talked about that last week or so. Jesus was pleased with them because they became seekers of him, but he still had problems with them. He had to teach them that you're not to seek me just to be fed earthly provisions. He said, don't come seeking me just because you eat of the bread that I fed you. That's not the reason you should seek me, but seek me so that I can lead you spiritually. That's his whole focus. Verse 27, he instructed them to seek for the spiritual meat and not the earthly. You know, I told you last year they missed it. God was offering spiritual meat to people, and they settled for milk. Feed me like a baby. Still going on. This year it better change. This year better be a turning point for a lot of people, in Christianity especially. Or he's going to go to whosoever will out there, and you're going to be mad about it because you didn't move. So again, I told you he offered spiritual meat. They settled for milk. So let's look at Matthew 8, 23 and 27. And we'll jump on some more of this boat, talking about the boats and things. Now, just after verse 22, Jesus says, you know, follow me. He's been trying to get people to follow him so long, and they said, I'll stay right here, thank you. And that's Christianity in a nutshell. I just told you, you can go home now. He said, follow me, and let the dead bury their dead. If you're going to stay in a dead church, you're going to die with it. If you're going to stay in a dead church, you're missing what God's offering you. He's saying there's so much more. There's a place you can gather and we do something. There's a place you can gather and you can be part of something where it's going forward in the spirit realm, and you can see what's yet to come and strive toward that, and you're ahead of the game when it happens. But no, you can stay there. Keep doing the same old things. It's like to put you on rerun. There's so many churches that you could go in today, and it's a rerun of what they did last week, and a rerun and a rerun. And they should film everybody and just put them on the big screen and say, nothing's changed. And so that big screen could be used for something there, couldn't it? So let the dead bury the dead. And right after he said that, he says this, and when he entered into the ship, there he goes, his disciples followed him. They did something. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, and the ship was covered with waves, but he was asleep. Here we get to where Jesus was so cool in the spirit. His disciples came and woke him and said, Jesus, you got to save us because we're going to perish. And he said unto them, why are you fearful, O ye of little faith? Then he arose, rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Your presence, carrying Jesus with you, should keep you calm. Everybody else is going to try to stir you up. Everybody else is going to try to make a storm in your life at every corner. That's what the enemy wants, is get you overwhelmed with so many storms you can't handle them all. Jesus said, just chill out. I got this. You should have too. Where's your faith at? He was saying. But the men marveled at saying, what manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? In other words, how could he do that? Now, let me break that one down for you. In verse 16, the disciples, his followers, you know, they got to be willing to move. And in verse 18, you know, I think I'm getting there. Here we are. Here it says, Jesus said, follow me and let the dead bury the dead. Now, last year was supposed to be also the year of letting go, but a lot of people didn't let go of some stuff. They're still dealing with it. They chose to stay the same again. So here we go with that. And then in verse 23 of that, you saw that Jesus entered into, and the disciples followed. Well, Jesus is ready to go somewhere. Jesus said, let's go. I'm going to enter in here. Now, you going with me? Let's go. If you ain't, you won't go. You'll stay the same. Verse 24, you can expect a storm when you enter in with Jesus. The enemy don't like it when you're getting closer to Jesus. So expect his storm, his waves to come crashing, a tempest to come at you. Now, it may rattle you, but Jesus is not fazed by it. We got to learn to be the same way. You can't be fazed by the next storm that's coming your way. It's building right now. There's a storm on every horizon. But you can't be, overwhelmed by it. You got to say, okay, I've got this one too. We've got faith. So in verse 25, you're going to find out they said, oh my God, we're going to perish, we're going to perish. What's that? We panic when prophetic pressure is put upon us. That's sad, but we do. First thing we know how to do is to panic. It's prophetic pressure pushing you to your purpose. That which was supposed to take you out is driving you to your purpose. Right. Verse 26, Jesus questions our faith when we panic in the storm. He said, where's your faith at? Jesus even questions your faith when you panic. Every time you panic, he says, why are you panicking? Why are you panicking? Don't you realize what this is by now? They were in awe of Jesus, verse 27, and in their moment of adoration of Jesus, that what he had just done, calming the storm, they said this. Now this is, don't get looked at too much. What manner of man is this? They still tried to find a fleshly reason for why Jesus could do such a thing. Manner of man. First of all, he was God and man. He was spirit and he was flesh, but his spirit ruled him. So he wasn't your normal man. You shouldn't be either. So what manner of man is this? He's a man of God. That's why he could do it. But they still tried to find a fleshly reason, like logical mindsets people do these days. Can't do it that way. So anyway, he just told them the reason why he did it. It's by faith. I did this by faith. And I'm trying to teach you how to do it too. All right, let me jump over to Matthew 14, 22 and 23. And I think I wrote this one down. It says, and straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. That's a big one. Wow, love this. And the reason he done that, he said, I got something I want you to move and do. Now these other people, the multitudes, they're not ready for it yet. So I'm going to send them away. But you, I'm talking to you by the Spirit. He constrained them. In other words, he put prophetic pressure on the ones who believed. He said, I need something more out of you. I expect more out of you. Get into a ship. Get into the boat. Now, go before me to the other side. A lot of times you want Jesus to go before you and make the path easy and straight for you. And he said, no, that's not how it works. Go before me. See, and then I'll be with you. But you're the one's going to do it. I broke the bread. I gave it to you. You feed the multitude. See? Same principle here. So, spiritually, you're going to the other side. We're moving. We're going somewhere. So, as you know, as they were going by themselves, they got panicky and they looked out and saw him on the water that time. Same scenario here. Now, verse 23, when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. He ascended. See, that's compared to when Jesus ascended and said, I go to be with the Father, but I'll leave you a comforter. Same pattern. When the evening was come, he was there alone. Jesus always got alone. It's a lonely walk. I admit that. But when you get alone, you get more powerful because everybody's against you and you go to the Father who's never against you. So he goes up to a mountain and he prays. And he found his strength there. You see the pattern? I do. He pressured his followers to get into the boat spiritually and he sent the others away and then he went away alone. That's a minister's life. He encourages you. He pours the word into you. He says, go, go, go. People that don't come, I've got to send them away. They're not ready for this. They're not ready for some of this meat. They're still on the milk. I got to do this, but I got to go get away for a while. I've got to get by myself. And Jesus went alone into heaven. Jesus went by himself into heaven. But he went there to pray, which shows that he's now making intercession for us where he is now. Same pattern. He ascended to heaven to make intercession for you and me with God. He said, God, don't kill them yet. God, give them another chance. God, these people, I know what they're going through. I went down there and lived it. So he's making intercession. Now, let's look at our boat trip. This is the one I got to do some good, quick reading in. God Almighty, I hope I have time. Acts 27, 1 through 44. And you're going to find that this is a boat trip after Jesus had went up into heaven. Now, here's where Paul, the disciple, is now on you and me. We're not talking about Genesis now. We're not talking about Jesus now. We're talking about us now. Paul represents us. We've been left with a mission to do. Paul was supposed to go to Rome prophetically, but he didn't look like he's ever going to get there because he took a stormy ride, just like you and me are going to in this life too. 27 starts out and says, when he was determined that he should sail into Italy, they delivered Paul, when it was determined, this boat full of people, that prisoners and all, delivered Paul and other prisoners, one named Julius, a centurion in Augustus' band. They'd entered into a ship of Adramyttus, and when we launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia, one Aristarchus, big word like mayonnaise man, and a Macedonia of Thessalonia being with us. All these people was in the boat, in other words. The next day we touched at Sidon, and Julius courteously entreated Paul and gave him liberty to go into his friends and refresh himself. And he just saying, okay, I'm going to treat you as good as I can. And when he had launched from there, he sailed to Cyprus because the winds were contrary. Here we go. They're in a boat now. Here come those winds. It's going to happen. Count on it. When he sailed over the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, so I wish I could have named some names for these people and I could save a lot of time, we could come to Myra and city of Lycia. And their centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing into Italy, and he put us therein. Now when he had sailed slowly many days, and scarce were come against us in Sinaitis, Sinusitis it sounds like, the wind was not suffering us. We sailed under Crete over to Salmon patties sound good right now. So, and hardly passing into a place which is called the Fair Havens, whereuntil was the city of Lasea. Now, all these words are going to throw you in where they went. But there was, in other words, they was being diverted. Everywhere they tried to go, it was being diverted. The wind wouldn't allow them to go here. They was moving so slow. And when much time was spent, the sailing got dangerous because the fast had passed, and Paul admonished him, saying to him, I perceive, now this is Paul trying to be wise to him, saying, I perceive this voyage is going to be with much hurt and a lot of damage, not only to the ships, but probably our lives. I'm paraphrasing here for a second time. Now I'm reading from the Bible. Nevertheless, the centurions, they believed the master of the ship more than they did Paul. Whoa, there's a big mistake. This guy knows this ship. He built it naturally. He knows what to do best. Paul knew what was best spiritually. He walked with the Lord. This guy built his ship, did not. Because the haven was not commodious to winter, more part advised to depart thence, even meaning that they attained to Finis in their winter. In other words, they was trying to find a place to hoard and lay down for the winter because maybe it'd be better when that passed. Now, we're going to get on, speed it up some. When the wind blew and all this, they said that they obtained the purpose, losing, they sailed to Crete. But not long after, against another wind, and it had a name too, Euroclidean or whatever you want to say. When the ship was caught and could not bear it up to wind, they let her drive. In other words, let's give up. Let this wind take us wherever it wants to take us. They're tossed to and fro, like whatever wind wants to blow them. And they didn't give up. Naturally, they had no way to control it. They didn't know what to do. Running under an island called Claudia, much work come to the boat. You're always going to have to work at it. It never stops. The work never stops. And when they had taken it up, they used helps, undergirding the ship and fearing that they should fall into quicksand and straight sail, so they were driven. So their fear was driving them now. They was, we're dying here. And being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, they lightened the ship. There comes a time where you got to lighten your load. You're carrying too much baggage, too much weight. You can't do this in the natural anymore. Let some of that stuff go. I told you last year was to let him go. And the third day, they cast out with their own hands, tackling the ship. And when neither sun nor stars and the days appeared, no small tempest lay us any hope that we should be saved. It was taken away. All hope was gone. All of it was gone, taken away from them. But after a long absence, Paul stood before them in the midst and said, Sir, he tried again. Paul said, let me tell y'all something. Y'all wasn't hearkening to me. You should have done this. You should have done that. But now I exhort you to be of good cheer. They didn't want to hear that at that time. What? Be of good cheer. We're about to die. This storm's awful. There shall be no loss of man's life, but just this ship. Wow, that's a prophetic statement from Paul to say in the middle of the storm, not after it had passed. Paul prophetically said it during the storm. A lot of people can't do that. He said, For stood by me this night was the angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve. In other words, I serve God, and I trust God, and he's shown me this. He said, Fear not, Paul, you must be brought before Caesar. In other words, you're going to accomplish what I sent you to do, but it's going to be a weird journey on how you get there. If we knew where we was going to go and saw it beforehand, and then we knew what it was going to cost us to get there, we'd never go. But he said, it's going to happen. God had given him all this, and they set sail with thee. And he said, Be of good cheer. I believe that God shall be with us as it was told unto us. Now, I'm going to really fly now because we're running out of time. And pages don't want to cooperate. And it says, But when the 14th night come, he was driven up and down. The midnight shipmen deemed them draw near to the country, and he found it 20 fathoms. In other words, it seemed like it's further and further away, and further away every time they sound out. They feared that they would be crashed against the rocks, and then he went on to say the men were about to jump ship. And then Paul said to the centurion soldiers, except you bide in this ship, you won't be saved. That's the message for the day. Unless you stay in the ship that God's put you in, you're not going to be saved. You're going to lose your life. You're not going to reach your destination. So then they began to cut the ropes off and everything, and Paul got them to eat something for their strength, because you got to work, what I tell you. And he said, take some meat. What I tell you about that? Take some meat, not milk, for this is for your health, both physically and spiritually. And he said, but not one hair of your head shall become harm to you. So Paul had the faith to say, hang in there, the storm's going to pass. Believe me, let's ride it out. And when he spoke, and he gave God thanks. There's that pattern again. We're breaking the bread, thanking it, and giving it to the multitudes. He gave thanks to them all, and they began to eat. He said they were all of good cheer, and they took some meat. Well, there you go. You know, take what the man of God says and use it. You know, put it inside of you. Let it do its work. So they were all in the ship, told how many they were and all, and they'd eaten enough. They'd lightened the ship, and they cast out the wheat into the sea. And I can go there deeper if I wanted to about the wheat from the tares if I wanted to. But cast out the wheat into the sea. Things you think you have need of, there comes a time where you got to let that go and say, no, I just need God. I just need God. That's it. So finally, here we go at the end. They discovered a creek with a shore, and they were minded if it were possible to thrust their ship into that area right there. And when they had taken up the anchors, taken up the anchor anchors, they committed themselves to the sea, loosed their bands, and hoisted up the mainsail of the wind, and they went towards shore. They said, this is it. This is our only shot right here. And they fell into place where the two seas met, and they ran aground, and they got stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part of the ship was broken. You got to let go of that stuff behind you. The stuff behind you is history. That's your past. Let it go. And the violence of the waves, and the soldiers wanted to kill the prisoners lest any of them were to escape. But the centurion was willing to say, Paul, God's always going to protect you on his mission. If you stay in his will, he'll protect you. Out of his will, he can't guarantee. So they kept them from their purpose, and they which could swim cast himself, and they all got to land. Some of them were on board, some were on broken ships. We're all going to get there in our own way, in our own journey. Some are going to be this way, some are going to be that way. That's why your life can't be patterned after somebody else's. You got to walk your own path. So, and it came to pass that they escaped all safely to the land. Now, I'm going to tie it all together real quickly and we're done. Paul got to where he was going. Why? You just saw in that rambling, long, have to speed read there, that he was commanded of God to go to Rome. But look at all those places, those big word places I named that he had to go. Like a ping pong ball in a machine. Bang, go here. Storm blew him there. The storm blew him here. He just kept true to the word. He even got to the point where he said, no. I know y'all panicking. I know it's all like we're going to die. But God has shown me we're going to get there. And if you'll just stay true to what we're saying, you'll get there. And prophetically, he was pressured to go to Rome. But even though he went through hell and high water, if you want to say it like that, but he went through hell to get there. You are going to get where you're going to go with God, but you're going to go through hell to get there. And I've told you over and over, the way you get to heaven is through hell. But he did not miss the boat. That's the key thing. Paul did not miss the boat. And that's the one that took him there in the physical, but he was led by the Spirit. You see the difference? Physically, he got where he was going, but he was led spiritually like a navigation tool. His spiritual GPS told him, God said, you're going to get there, but I ain't going to tell you how you're going to get there. Just hang in there. Hang in there. You're going to get there. So anyway, here's where we wind it down. There was a divine interruption in his life, just like most of the men and women used in the Bible. Do you know that Moses was living a good life? He could have had a life of luxury, lifestyles of the rich and famous. But God moved upon him and said, I'm going to interrupt your life. I got something I want you to do for me. And he went through hell out in the wilderness with those whiners and moaners and complainers all those 40 years. But he got where he was going. He accomplished his mission for God. Do you know Mary was a young little girl that had big hopes and dreams of being something, in her community, or maybe she wanted to be this or do that, and God tapped her on the shoulder and interrupted her life and said, you're going to bear my son of the Spirit. Just like Noah. Can you imagine the ridicule that she got when she started getting pregnant? Amazing. Everybody around you probably was against you. Thank God Joseph wasn't, her husband. See, that's what I'm talking about. Same thing's going to happen to you and me. Samson was a big, strong man, cocky, running around doing all this stuff. Nobody messed with Samson, and he was thinking, well, that's good. I can do good in my community with this strength I have. I can protect them from soldiers and all the bad's going on. But even that, God tapped him on the shoulder and said, I'm going to divinely interrupt your life, and you're going to go do something greater for me, even if it cost him his life. And Paul, there you go, just like we learned. All the disciples actually says it will be the same way for you and me. They all had to be divinely interrupted. You know, they was all fishing, and here comes Jesus. They was all going through their everyday work, just fishing, and Jesus comes along and said, follow me. That changed their life forever. This is the year for that we're coming into. And are you prepared? This is what I'm leaving you with. Are you prepared for when the prophetic pressure comes and the divinely interruptions gets to your regularly scheduled life? What you going to do with it? Because when he slaps you off your donkey, just like he did Paul's story, there's going to be setbacks and storms, and your calling will come calling in the coming year to divinely interrupt you. Are you preparing for it now? Prepare for it now. Build your boat good, because it's coming. Storms and God's calling. So expect the unexpected and the unplanned, yet prophetic pressure is going to increase. And don't be afraid to go into those uncharted waters, because God created and owns those waters too. So what I'm telling you today is basically, don't miss the boat. Don't miss the boat, because we're on a journey all together, but we're all on a journey individually, and don't miss it. Prepare your vessel good, prepare it for the storms, because they're going to come too, but it's going to drive you to your purpose. That's why they're there. All right, you ready? Let's pray.